just be a host in life, not a guest. You know, not just in your business affairs, but in your personal life. The more value you create for other people, the more opportunity you create for yourself. You know, just as a rule in life, pay it forward, be a good host. That's the first thing.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I am your host Chandni, and today we have a CX strategist with us on the show. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 187 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 4 lakh visitors annually. And now for our guest, Matt Watkinson is the co-founder and CEO of Methodical, a boutique customer experience and strategy consultancy. He helps businesses develop and refine concepts for new products and services while improving current customer experiences. He advises leadership teams on how to create greater value for customers that guarantee commercial returns. He's also the author of The Grid and the 10 principles behind great customer experiences. As an expert in customer experience, he has been cited by the world's top research firms and has been given keynote addresses at every kind of organization imaginable. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But before we dive into our interview with Matt, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap on the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders around the globe. So, beginning with the questions, Matt, can you tell us something about your book, The 10 Principles Behind Great Customer Experiences? And what are these 10 principles that you talk about?
Sure. Well, I began my career designing websites and software. Kind of back then, customer experience wasn't really as pervasive or popular as it is now, and I only ended up working in that broader customer experience field because the clients that I was designing websites and software for were gradually wanting to integrate more and more different channels. So they might have a kiosk, they might have a contact center, they might have a website, they might have a showroom, and because digital technologies or web-based technologies were allowing people to do more innovative things that improve those experiences, we kind of gradually ended up joining these things together into these whole kind of multi-channel experiences for people, which is how I ended up working in customer experience. I didn't come to it from a management, marketing, or customer service background. It was really from a design background. And a few years into my career, maybe 7 years, I started to think, well, this whole process of trying to improve these experiences would be a lot easier if we had a set of principles that could guide our decision making. Now, often we do have a lot of data to go on, but sometimes if you're developing new products, you need something else to guide you in the absence of data. And also interpreting your findings or observations in a structured way makes it a lot easier to turn those into actionable insights and things. So I guess my thinking was, if we had these principles, it would be a lot easier, more efficient, and more effective. So, for example, it's one thing to say, well, how can we improve this experience? It's another thing to say, how can we systematically remove effort from this experience? It's much more clear what you're trying to do. It's much more precise. So, yeah, thinking in terms of principles really allows you to be more efficient and effective. So I spent 3 years trying to identify what a complete set of principles would be. And the result of that was this book, The 10 Principles Behind Great Customer Experiences, which came out very early on in 2013. So what are the principles? The first of the 10 was that a great customer experience is one that reflects the customer's identity. We naturally kind of gravitate towards products that resonate with our particular values or self-image, or show a kind of affiliation with the social groups that we either belong to or aspire to belong to. So reflecting and also on a much more pragmatic scale, when businesses show that they know who they're actually dealing with and the history that that person has with the brand, it improves that experience. So that was the first one. The second principle was that a great experience is one that satisfies what I'd called the higher objective. So when we're dealing with a business or when we're on a customer journey, it tends to be in the pursuit of a particular goal or objective or task that we're looking to complete. So obviously helping people to achieve what they're trying to do is going to improve that experience. But also, the key idea behind that principle was that there's normally a higher objective that we're trying to achieve. There's a kind of hierarchy of goals, and the key to creating a great experience is to try and understand what their overarching goal is, because that kind of takes your blinkers off and allows you to come up with more innovative solutions. So that was the second one. The third principle was that a great experience is one that leaves nothing to chance. What I'm really talking about there is that journeys tend to begin a lot earlier than people think and end a lot later, and there tends to be a lot more going on in between than people think about. So that third principle was about getting people to think about the details of the interactions that compose the journey. Then we really moved into more pragmatic things about how do you improve them. The next three principles were that a great experience is one that sets and meets expectations, a key theme. Then that they should or could aspire to be effortless. And then the following principle after that was that a great experience is stress-free. So effort reduction and stress reduction and expectation management, not just meeting expectations, but making sure that you set them, is probably the kind of holy trinity of good customer experience, certainly where we see a lot of challenges there. Yeah, so that's the first set. Then we were talking more about the domain of pleasure, particularly sensory and social pleasure. So a great experience is one that delights the senses. Every experience is sensory in some way, and that's can be a major source of advantage. Then a great experience is socially engaging, or can be, if that's a component of your experience, building relationships with customers, making those interactions between people pleasurable and enjoyable, or building community can be a huge source of value. And then the last two were that a great experience is one that puts the customer in control. We have this kind of innate drive for autonomy or feeling in control of life. So the more that you can do that, the better. And finally, a great experience is one that, as we described it, considers the emotions. So not just what do we want people to feel or how do we want people to feel about an experience, but how do we want them not to feel, right? So, what emotions are we trying to avoid? Maybe anger or a sense of frustration, and then what are we trying to get people to feel? Perhaps it might be trust if we're a bank, or to feel particularly relaxed, or to feel excited, or maybe a positive element of surprise, whatever it might be. Thinking about the experience through this emotive lens can be immensely powerful. So we had these 10 principles, and not necessarily encouraging people to apply all 10 in every interaction, because it very quickly becomes overwhelming, but to try and think about which of these principles might apply most clearly within a given interaction, and then how you might use those to help structure your ideation. And then more broadly, to ask yourself, what do we want to be known for as a brand? Which of these things are we hoping to emphasize throughout our experience? Are we going to be a very sensory brand? Are we going to be very easy to deal with? Are we going to have some particular kind of emotive signature that our brand is known for? And then just making sure that the interactions that customers have are reinforcing those particular experiential signatures. So it kind of provides a universally applicable framework that can work for every kind of business, whether you're doing products or services, whether they're cheap, whether they're expensive, B2B, B2C, we've seen these principles in the last 7 years, I guess it would be now, being used all over the world by all different kinds of organizations, which of course has been very gratifying as the author to see just how much they have helped people to improve these experiences, and obviously also, more importantly, perhaps to improve the lives of their customers, or just make them a little bit easier, a little more enjoyable, a little less stressful, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's the book, basically. Monologue over.
That's great, Matt. Thank you. So, moving on to the next question. A common assumption behind customer experience initiative is that there's a strong relationship between loyalty and advocacy. How do you think are loyalty and advocacy different, and is customer loyalty enough?
Yeah, so look, this relationship between loyalty and advocacy is an interesting one, and also the relationship between customer experience and loyalty um, is a very interesting one. So when you look at the research, certainly the research that I've seen, and I've spent quite a lot of time looking at this topic, what you tend to see is that there's a kind of assumption that the more loyal people are, the more advocacy they will do for your brand. But in fact, what we tend to do is share the news, not the olds, right? So a lot of advocacy is actually driven by recent or newly acquired customers who are joining the brand. So what you tend to see is that people talk about things that are new to them, like, oh, I just bought this, or oh, I just saw this film, or oh, this just happened to me today. And what they don't tend to do is proactively discuss things that are kind of embedded in the fabric of their lives. So the assumption that the more loyal people are, the more advocacy they will do for you, it kind of depends what you mean by advocacy and whether you consider that to be something that's kind of active, in that they're proactively talking about it, or whether it's something that's passive, whereby if somebody asks them for a recommendation, what will they recommend? Now, of course, a loyal customer who's been with you for a long time, if somebody says, hey, could you recommend a make of power drill or whatever it might be, then obviously they will recommend a product that they've had a satisfactory experience with over a long period of time. But when it comes to proactive advocacy and spreading positive word of mouth, which is what we really want people to do, that tends to be driven more by new customers because it's new to them, and we naturally talk more about recent or novel events than ones that are just kind of part of our everyday existence. I'm trying to think of an occasion where, for example, I've recommended Google to somebody, which is obviously a product that I'm using all day, every day, or recommended Amazon to somebody, which is a product that, a service that I'm using, all the time, or recommended my Toyota Prius. I mean, it's just part of life. I don't even really think about it, I certainly don't think I've recommended the iPhone to anybody, but I've had an iPhone for probably 12 years now, right? It's just part of life. You don't really think about it. So this could be a major challenge for CX programs because people are making the assumption that the more loyal people will be, the more they will advocate for us. But in fact, it might be that it's newly acquired customers who are actually in the engine room when it comes to word of mouth, which means that first-time customers in particular, warrant special attention to make sure that they have an exceptional experience because they're more likely to talk about it and tell other people. So yeah, it's a great question and something that I think is much misunderstood.
Absolutely. So, we've seen that you've mentioned that all business decision makers must strive to master three intellectual modalities. So, can you tell us what are they and how can they be useful?
Right. Well, I mean, these are all just fundamental things that, are important to think about when it comes to the experience. So one of the things that I'm there are two things in particular that I'm kind of keen on philosophically when it comes to customer experience. I guess one of them would be, don't be one dimensional. Like, don't think that there's just one way to do everything. or there's one magic solution that works in every situation or every or every kind of scenario that you find yourself in. And also, don't overcomplicate things. Like, don't try and make what is or should be a very pragmatic discipline into a kind of intellectual contest where everything needs to be done very cleverly. Almost everything that I've seen that works in customer experience is very, very basic and very simple and very intuitive to most people if they were to just think of their customer as a guest and them, the service provider, as a host. So not necessarily customer, business, or client, service provider, but more host and guest. And if you think about how a good host treats their guests, it tends to be things like doing things that make them feel particularly valued, that kind of discretionary effort. It tends to be, saying thank you to people, like all very, very basic, unclever things that we take for granted when we are with our friends, perhaps, or with our closest family, or if we're staying at a great hotel, kind of basic manners. Basically wanting to do things that make other people feel good, is really at the heart of customer experience. And it's easy to get so wrapped up in analysis and data and cleverness that you forget that actually none of this stuff is particularly complicated or clever. You just need to think, like, what can I do that's going to make this person feel better about this, or make their life easier, or make sure that they have a good time and enjoy themselves. And that actually, a lot of the time the challenge is just trying to be too clever about it and ignoring the basics. Like, one of the best feelings that you can create in a customer is this thing I was writing about, discretionary effort. It's just a feeling of you didn't have to do that, but you did it anyway, which shows appreciation. It shows that you want to create value. It shows that you care about that person. And once you're in the mindset of thinking about things like discretionary effort, then you see this whole world of opportunity open up where you can do often very small, very inexpensive, little details that transform the customer's perception. And that's the key, really, is about perception. It's about the memories that people take from the experience, because ultimately it's those memories that are going to change or influence their behavior more in the future. So it's very important to just don't be rigid, don't be one-dimensional, and don't be clever. Those are the things that you want to not do, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Matt. So what do you think? How can businesses transform loyal customers into advocates for their brands?
As we've kind of just been discussing, if advocacy is driven primarily by novelty or newness, it's not really the loyalty of the customer that is going to decide their advocacy, it's remarkability. So the whole question of how do we transform a loyal customer into an advocate? Well, really what we need to be doing is making sure that there are distinctive and memorable interactions that are worth talking about, that are positive. I mean, obviously we don't want people to be talking about bad experiences or interactions that they've had. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that, well, first of all, we're not doing anything bad, right? We're doing nothing wrong. And then on top of not doing anything wrong, what we want to be making sure that we do is create remarkable, positive and memorable interactions on top, perhaps things that are slightly unexpected, that kind of defy their expectations in some way and make them more memorable and remarkable. And then, of course, they're more likely to talk about that because, of course, we share things that are novel and new. So it's not so much a question of how do we turn loyal customers into advocates. It's more, how do we create remarkable and memorable experiences that anybody might want to talk about, whether they're loyal or not. And obviously, we want those to be positive. So do nothing bad, and then do a few things that are memorably good, perhaps at unexpected points in the journey. and that should see a rise in positive word of mouth.
Absolutely correct. So, talking about customer experiences, what do you think? To what extent should businesses try to replace the human customer experience with a digital one?
The only way that you can really answer a question like that is on a case-by-case basis, because it really depends on the source of value for the customer. So if for example, you're a luxury hands-on brand, you might not want to replace the doorman at your hotel with an automatic door, because it might be that the interaction that they have with that person is a source of value. Of course, it could be digitized. You can always replace a human being with a machine or a robot, but it might not necessarily improve the experience. It also depends, I think, on whether the nature of that interaction is something that people look forward to doing, or whether it's a necessary kind of burdensome task that they'd rather not be doing. So it depends. Is this a kind of transactional, functional thing that I just need to get done? Or is this a source of value or relationship building? So it really depends on a number of factors. First of all, your brand and what you want to be associated with. Second of all, the context in which the customer is dealing with you. And third of all, is moving to a digital solution instead of a human solution going to create more value or less value for the customer? So I was actually thinking about this over the last couple of days. So I get up pretty early in the morning, and when I get up, I walk out of the door and I go 2 blocks out of my house to a coffee shop that's on the corner, and I get a cup of coffee and I walk home, and that's kind of how I start my day. Now, because of COVID and all sorts of other things, and basically being a bit cheap on my part, because you get a discount if you do it this way, I've started using the app to order the coffee, even though I still walk up there and get it, right? So when I get out of bed, go into the kitchen, pick up my phone that's charging, I launch the app, and I press repeat order, because I always get the same thing. And then I walk out the door, and when I get there, the coffee is waiting for me, freshly made, on this kind of stand or rack that's organized alphabetically outside the coffee shop, and I just pick it up and I walk home, right? So order app, walk, pick up, walk home, right? And I pay for it through the app, and it's all automatic. So what have they done there? Well, they've taken all of the friction out of the experience, which is, so I just press one button and my coffee is ordered. But what they've also done is that I have zero interaction with the people who work in the shop. And I quite like the people who work in the shop. Like, they're nice, they're friendly, they say good morning to you. Because I've been there quite a lot, like, they already know my order. So they're like, oh, you just want your regular coffee. And so in a sense, this experience is better, because from a transactional or functional point of view, I still end up with exactly the same cup of coffee. There's no possibility of getting a mistake on the order, because I just press the button, right? I don't have to queue. I don't have to put my debit card in the machine and put my PIN in and everything. All of that interaction has gone. But basically, all of the interaction has gone. So I'm not really having an experience at all. So this is why I think these principles that we talked about earlier on are kind of interesting. Like, is the coffee shop's brand more about social pleasure and the joy that you get from interacting with the people there? Or is it more about this goal of getting a cup of coffee and getting home? Like, what's the source of value? And in a way, the digitization of the experience has emphasized one source of value. It's very convenient. It's very easy. There's no waiting, zero waiting. I literally walk, I pick it up, I walk back. But it's also robbed perhaps a deeper connection to the business and the people who work there, and some of the community elements of having a local coffee shop. You see what I mean? So is it better or is it worse? And this is what I've been asking myself, is like, as a customer, do I prefer this very sanitized digital experience, or did I actually like having somebody to say hello to at 5:15 in the morning when I've just kind of rolled out of bed, and it would be nice to, you know, they're nice, friendly, cool people. So I'm not sure the experience is better for me. But this is the problem with digitization, is that everybody just assumes that it's better, but it's compromising the relationship quality in some way for me in this scenario. And that's something that I'm not sure that people often think about. So yeah, it's a very good question, and it's very context dependent.
Correct, I agree. I think a lot of businesses, just because of COVID, are getting into the trend of digitalizing their customer experience rather than actually, thinking behind that, how their customers would react to it, or, what is the source of value that the customers get from it. Absolutely correct. So, before we end up the interview, are there any sound bites that you would like to leave our audience with?
I suppose what I could do is basically just try and distill down our particular philosophy around customer experience, if that is helpful for people. And we've already touched a lot on this, but I think a few things are like, just be a host in life, not a guest. You know, not just in your business affairs, but in your personal life. The more value you create for other people, the more opportunity you create for yourself. You know, just as a rule in life, pay it forward, be a good host. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is that when it comes to customer experience, the aim is to be remembered for good things. If people don't remember it, it didn't happen. So it needs, first of all, the things that you do need to be noticeable. Not everything needs to be like in everybody's face, but you need to do something that's noticeable, memorable, and distinctive. So you need to think really as a brand about what you want to be known for. Like, what's the experience going to be like for your customers? And most businesses don't do that. They just kind of arbitrarily try and improve everything. And in random ways, you know, they might do a little bit of making this easier and a little bit of making that more fun and blah, blah, blah. But because they're not consistent in their execution, they're not building memory structures, you know, they're not being known for anything. And if you think about a brand that you like or love, there's probably something that you associate them with, right? And so unless you're doing that, you're not kind of doing a good job. So I guess the perversion there, or the irony there, is that I kind of am increasingly brand rather than customer focused when it comes to customer experience. You've got to think about your brand a lot more than most people do. You can't just do everything outside in with the customer, because customers don't really know what they want anyway. And you need to become known for something distinctive, which means that you need to start with your brand, not your customer. You know, and I think that's, you know, people find that opinion very unpopular, but the evidence is the evidence. You look at how Disney do it, you look at how Apple do it, you look at how Amazon do it. Yeah, they care about their customers. Yeah, they want them to be satisfied. Yeah, they care about their wants and needs and all of that stuff. But they also have a clear idea of what their brand is and what they want the Disney or Apple experience to be like. Or, I mean, Apple less so these days. But, you know, so you need to start with who you want to be. And then the other thing I would say is, don't forget that this is a pragmatic discipline, right? What really matters is improvements in the real world, not slide decks and strategy and cleverness. Get out there and fix stuff and make execution, not strategy, your focus. And you'll learn a lot more by doing than you will by talking and planning, right? Just get out there and do, get it done, make some improvements, and build momentum that way. And that's, I think, some hopefully pretty reliable guidance that if people follow that, they'll be better for it.
Absolutely, Matt. This was amazing. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Your insights were really valuable, and I know our audience is really going to love this interview. So we'll be
Oh,
back
my
with
pleasure.
a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.